We are jumping straight into something absolutely foundational today. We're looking at the Apostle Paul's defense in Acts chapter 22. But listen, we are not just treating this like some dusty piece of ancient history. We're going to frame this historical encounter as a highly strategic, incredibly practical masterclass for your modern ministry. So let's dive right in.
I want to drop you directly into the blinding light and the intense high stakes of Paul's sudden conversion. This moment sets the stage for literally everything that follows. Fast forward a bit, and Paul is facing severe allegations. A violent crowd thinks he's teaching against their people, their law, and the temple. They're even accusing him of polluting the holy place by bringing Greeks inside. His life is totally on the line here. But instead of panicking, Paul delivers an absolute masterclass in communication and defense.
So here is our ministry playbook syllabus. We're covering 1. Building a common ground. 2. The power of personal testimony. 3. Courage in everyday discipleship. 4. Being commissioned to the Gentiles. And 5. Wisdom under intense persecution. Starting with section 1, building a common ground and diffusing a hostile crowd. Now keep in mind, Paul is facing a mob that wants to tear him apart. But what does he do? He uses an exact, step-by-step strategy to instantly lower their defenses. You could hear a pin drop. First, he relies entirely on the Holy Spirit to give him the right words. Second, he establishes common ground. Third, he shows them massive respect. He literally calls them brethren and fathers. He gives them absolute dignity, even when they're actively trying to kill him. And fourth, he uses the Hebrew language. It's a language they intimately understood. He didn't speak down to them, He spoke directly to them. That true connection, it starts with acknowledging their sincere motives. Paul proudly says he was a Jew born in Tarsus, which was known for Greek philosophy, but he specifically makes sure to mention his Jewish education under Gamaliel, a highly venerated doctor of the law. By saying, hey, I was once as zealous for God as you are right now, Paul was actually validating the very motives driving them to kill him. It's brilliant. He established a bond. For us as ministers, when we're witnessing, identifying with your audience and proving you get where they're coming from is exactly what compels them to listen. Which brings us to section 2, the power of personal testimony, the undeniable proof of the gospel. This is the moment Paul makes an incredible pivot. He moves away from theological debate and goes straight into the raw, messy, irrefutable reality of his own personal transformation. Look at this profound dichotomy. Before, an injurious persecutor of the church. After, a zealous preacher of Jesus Christ. Look, sound reasoning is great for defending the faith, sure, but sharing the raw testimony of what Christ actually did in your life, that is your absolute greatest tool. Paul saw his crazy conversion as the ultimate proof of Christianity. Going from a dangerous persecutor to a dedicated preacher, that proves a supernatural touch you just can't explain away. Opponents can debate theology with you all day long, but they cannot easily dismiss your lived experience. All right, section 3, courage and everyday discipleship. Let's talk about the unsung hero of Damascus. We're going to shift the spotlight off of Paul for a second to a quiet, behind-the-scenes hero, a disciple named Ananias. What made him the guy God used to heal Paul's physical and spiritual blindness? Well, the text says Ananias was devout according to the law and had a great reputation among all the Jews living there. He was highly sensitive to the Spirit, clearly a man of deep prayer. But here's the kicker. He was courageous enough to go meet Saul of Tarsus, a guy famous for murdering believers. That kind of courage only comes from a holy lifestyle and the power of the Spirit. It's a great reminder that the righteous really are as bold as a lion. God used an ordinary, faithful disciple to comfort one of the greatest apostles in history. So I've got a tough question for you today. Who is the Saul that you are currently too afraid to minister to? Because there are spiritually blind people all around us right now who just need someone to step up so their eyes can be open to the kingdom. If you can tap into that same devotion, spirit-filled life, and sheer courage that Ananias had, I promise you, the Lord will use your ministry beyond your wildest expectations. Moving to section 4, commissioned to the Gentiles. This is about absolute obedience over personal preference. Okay, so after his conversion, Paul is back in Jerusalem. He's praying in the temple, and he falls into a trance. God tells him his ministry is being completely redirected to the Gentiles. Paul had to totally surrender his personal desire to reach his own Jewish people and submit to God's absolute will. Now, flash forward to his defense in Acts 22. The second Paul mentions this vision and drops the word Gentiles, the crowd loses their minds. They thought Paul was teaching that Gentiles could bypass the law of Moses, and worse, that they were somehow more hardened than the Gentiles. The danger escalated in a heartbeat. They start screaming for his execution, calling him a villain unfit to live. Which leads into section 5, wisdom under intense persecution, and leveraging the law of the land. Things have now devolved into total chaos. The Roman chief captain steps in, but get this, he didn't understand the Hebrew that Paul was speaking, so he just assumes Paul must be guilty of something awful and orders him to be examined by scourging. Now, scourging was not just a basic punishment, it was a brutal torture method.
They used racks and invented torments specifically designed to rip a confession out of the accused. The source notes, this is widely considered a flagrant violation of human rights, natural justice, and just a foul blot on human nature. This horrific physical torment is exactly what Paul is about to endure. But watch what Paul does. Right as they are binding him with thongs, he looks dead at the centurion and asks, "Is it lawful for you to scourge a man that is a Roman and uncondemned?" Talk about a brilliant tactical maneuver. Because Paul was born in Tarsus, he was a Roman citizen, and Roman law dictated you couldn't punish a citizen until they were actually proven guilty. Paul knew his rights and he knew his responsibilities. For you as young ministers, this is a huge lesson. Knowing the law of the land where you operate is an incredibly vital tool. You absolutely must employ the lawful means God gives you to prevent harassment and protect your mission. Because Paul spoke up, he was untied, which actually created yet another opportunity for him to witness before the council. As we wrap this explainer up, I really want to leave you with this challenge. In your ministry, are you relying way too much on clever arguments rather than the undeniable power of your own testimony and courageous witness? Take a second and just reflect on that. Paul used his absolute darkest moments of persecution as a platform to boldly declare what Christ did for him. He leaned on common ground, undeniably real life change, and very practical wisdom. As you step out to lead, remember this. The testimony of a transformed life backed by spirit-led courage is a playbook that will never, ever fail you. Thanks for joining me, and I really hope this totally transforms how you approach your calling.